Welcome back. I mean, in the break we were saying this, and I suspect I should share this with the audience, that, I mean, it is amazing that in Cape Town, if we just chosen to have a quarter-final in the rugby soccer World Cup, the Soccer World Cup, mix my sports, we could have used Newlands and we wouldn't have needed that stadium and would have been $2 billion to the better. I mean, so let me ask you this. If you were the Minister of Sport, faced with the challenges now, what would you be doing? Would you say, we don't need this bid, we should be using the money in this way, and how would you go about it?
Well, first of all, I'd form an alliance with all the stakeholders. You've got some very powerful stakeholders. So you've got SARU and you've got private enterprise. You know, rugby in particular is very much LSM, top LSM, so you've got lots of money in rugby. All you have to do is channel that properly. And I thought if government and business and SARU get together and they make a concerted plan and they work together, you could make a huge difference.
Where would the difference be? How would, let me put this to you, because last time you spoke very movingly about the comparison between, it was Dale College, I think, and Bishops.
And Bishops,
right.
yeah.
Now, so, and that revealed, in a sense, what was going on the ground. What would you get them to do? In other words, this pot of money that could go to these fancy competitions, how would you direct it? What would you do?
Well, see, the obvious thing to me to do is you've got all these schools in the Eastern Cape, quite a few of them are actually high-functioning schools, who get, at the moment, like Dale actually is much better off than most of them. You know, they have absolutely nothing in terms of nutrition and coaches and gyms. So if you want everyone working together to say, let's focus on these 10 schools in the Eastern Cape, and we use those as feeder schools for the areas, and you give them every possible bit of help. I mean, not just for rugby, for all sport, for academics, for mentorship, for everything. You know, you just do it in an intelligent way. You know, it just seems to me the absolutely obvious thing to do, and I can't believe no one's done it. And I think part of the reason is that everyone fights with everyone else. You know, everyone points scores of everybody else. There's not this idea of everyone working together and saying, this is the problem, this is how we fix it.
So why is it that we've got this perspective that we think that if we have a fancy tournament in Durban, wherever it's going to be in 2022, whatever it is, that solves the problem? I mean, why aren't we dealing with these kinds of grassroots issues which cry out for attention?
Look, the reality is that it doesn't solve the problem, you know, and these large events then become a platform, you know, that are then leveraged for other things. But I mean, to the question you asked Liz earlier, there are three fundamental things that I think can be done, because I don't think resources are an issue in this regard, you know. So I would cut largesse, you know, in the Department of Sports and across all federations, because the Department of Sports also gives allocations to these federations.
Sorry, can I stop you there? When you say money is not a problem, then why is that we got so hundreds of schools with lousy fields and no facilities?
Well, it's not used appropriately, you know, where there is. We must acknowledge that the little we have, we need to be prudent with it by using it where it's needed most.
But if I told you that we could raise another 10 billion rand, because instead of having a fancy schmancy festival, we could have put the money there.
And I would say let's put the money in there, because actually 10 billion is what we need for the full implementation of the
But nobody's
national
showing
sports
that
plan.
vision to do that. That's what I'm trying to probe.
Exactly the point. For me, you have this debate that, okay, we need funding to host this event. Then there's another argument that we need funding to fund the sports development plan. Hello, why are we not using the existing funds to do this? It's amazing to me that, you know, the municipal infrastructure grant for sports and recreation that gets allocated to provinces and municipalities either doesn't get used or it's used for non-sport and recreation issues. So what I will do as the department, and the department is currently pushing for that, is to push for a takeover of that allocation to remain with the Department of Sports and Recreation, so that as the direct line department, they can monitor that and do the implementation of that. And thirdly, you know, what we actually need is that when you bid for events, right, you need to have consensus across all these departments. It does not help to have even underrepresentation in certain federations when you spend so much money to host these events, because you're not going to have enough teams to compete and even challenge for winning. Because ultimately, you know, sports is there to unite us as a nation. That's a full good, you know, we want. But ultimately, sports is a competitive environment, and there's got to be results in the field and outside of the field.
Talking about that competitive environment, how then does one convince a country that maybe we've got to hold back on our great ambition to say win a World Cup in rugby or whatever it may be? I mean, winning the World Cup in soccer is almost thinkable, but rugby is not. So how would one do that? How one would say, well, we're going to actually, this is going to be a longer process?
Well, I just think, we talk about it and we say, what's the most important thing to us? And we have some proper leadership on the issue. And we decide this as a nation. Nation building is the most important thing. We're still going to do extremely well. We might not win, but we're going to do a lot better than Bafana. So if we just say, look, this is what we're prioritizing now. Next, say 2019, we'll have a much better chance, presumably, and a much more integrated team. And let's just focus on getting those guys through. Because, there's so much anger and bitterness around rugby at the moment. And it's, you've got the right wing constantly challenging, and you get, if you just
read. When you say the right wing, just explain.
Well, like, AfriForum is now taking, it's suing Sorry. So you get all that. And if you just read the chat boards after stories on transformation, it's just depressing. The trolls, I think a lot of it comes from Australia and New Zealand, but nevertheless, it's very, very ugly. And then you get real anger from black players. So it shouldn't be like that in sport. It should be something which is used constructively.
You see, let me, in case I'm misunderstood, I don't suggest for one moment, my own view is that there may well be some black players now who should be in that side, sitting in the rugby side rather than the white players. So it's not as if, but I do think we all know that if we're going to sort of build a future, that it's got to go for the grassroots up rather than every 5 years us perennial having a moan about why we've only got so many black players in the side.
No, it's ridiculous. And I think it's partly because, what coaches are told, the performance contracts are you've got to win. If you don't win, you're out, or you don't get your bonus, whatever. So basically what the management from SARA is not good, but then they're responding presumably to what the public wants.
Well, of course, it raises an interesting thing about who you see as winning players, because there's a great debate out there as to whether, in fact, our team couldn't be a far more demographically diverse side and just be as good, if not better, and play nicer rugby. But I accept that that's for another occasion, and I'm not going to get there. So you tell me how you're going to change the discourse.
Yeah. Look, I think, this whole debate about making the Springboks more representative is often based on a premise that, if it is more representative, it won't have good quality to be a global force. And I don't think so. I don't think so. At the same time...
Although let me say this, what I'm trying to press is that may be true, but we all know that we have not unlocked the talent in this country, period. Because there's such skewed facilities and skewed structure, which reflects our apartheid.
Yeah. Look, there's no doubt that the history of the social inequalities in the country also plays out in sports as to which, players choose to play which sports, And you can always tell that where there are no lack of resources, certain players are attracted by the availability of the field. In many rural areas, the only available field of sport that's there is often football. That is why you see this mismatch. But also, if we've got, we produce reasonably enough talent through the Craven Week program, through the provincial teams, and are we saying that that quality isn't good enough to be in the Springboks? Because my argument would be, if that is the case, then we are not looking properly, because that is competitive talent that plays out itself in the Currie Cup and even in the Tri-Nations.
I accept that, but what worries me is how do we get a country where the playing fields are equal for everybody? And that's what I need to close on, because in a sense that's what I'm really intrigued about. We spend all this unbelievable money, we're going to, on yet another high-profile event, and we've heard that down there the playing fields are in some sad way not very different from what they were 20, 30 or 40 years ago. And that's simply unacceptable. And so where do we strike the balance between high-profile events that make us feel good for 3 days or 10 days, and in a sense the long haul of ensuring that all our sports teams reflect the demographics of our country and the talent, the innate talent of all South Africans? Well, you've heard quite a bit of the debate. You judge for yourself. Goodbye.